Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 841. I had the black pieces. My opponent started off with d4. I went knight f6, and then my opponent went knight c3, which is the fourth choice here, and introduces a number of interesting systems, including the Jobava attack with the bishop to f4 there, or the Richter-Veresov attack with bishop to g5. And he was kind of playing in the style of the Richter-Veresov. The main move here is d5, but I went with e6. There's nothing particularly wrong with that. And then if you wanted to continue a Richter-Veresov style, he should play bishop g5 here, after which the main move is d5. And then I can play the interesting move e4. And we get a complicated position here, taking advantage of the pin on the knight, so I have to take back with the pawn. And yeah, it's not like it's losing for black, but it leads to an interesting game, and white has some attacking chances. So interesting way to play. Anyway, instead of that, he played a3, and after a3 we're just out of the opening book. And of course a3 is really just too slow a move to be playing at this stage of the game. So I play this part of the game pretty well. I just continue with d5, taking the center. He continues the bishop g5. I just unpin immediately. He goes e3, I castle. He goes bishop h4 for no apparent reason. I think, he's kind of expecting me to play h6, and he was pre-moving that or something. That's my guess. Anyway, it's a wasted move for white. So white has wasted two moves in the opening. The bishop h4 move and the pawn to a6 are really not doing a lot for him at this stage. So I just continue. There's no immediate strike here, but just continuing with good development and trying to open things up while his pieces are undeveloped is the good strategy. Let's see. He goes knight f3, so he's getting his pieces out too eventually. Knight c6, bishop to g3, another kind of time-wasting move, but it does come with a bit of a threat. And the knight might hop into b5. Now, the chess engine would actually ignore that threat. It would take here, knight takes d4, and play bishop to d6, after which expects white to play bishop to b5. So knight to b5. And this is the kind of game where the chess engine likes black here, and it's probably objectively good for black. But the point is that if you take this bishop here, white is going to take back with the h-pawn and look for some quick attack along the h-file, and that can be difficult to deal with in both a slow game as well as in a over-the-board game. So I'm playing some cautionary moves here. I play a6 to keep. I was mainly thinking of the knight coming into b5, but it also keeps the bishop out of that square, and this still keeps an advantage to black. So it's not a terrible move, I guess, but it's not the way the chess engine would play. But I think I would still play that way myself, I guess. Let's see. So he goes in here with knight e5. I challenge the knight with knight to d7, and he decides to take on c6. So I don't mind this trade. It does double my c-pawns, but on the other hand, it gets rid of one of his most active pieces there. So it still leaves me with an edge. And when he plays e4, this is really an outright mistake. I mean, the other moves, they were kind of small mistakes, giving your opponent an edge in development needlessly is kind of a small mistake. It's not a game-losing mistake. But after this move, he should really lose the game. And it's not because of tactics. It's just because of the general principles. His king is still in the center. His development is not completed. And he's opening up the position, and that's just wrong. And so there are alternatives here. The chess engine actually prefers the move knight a4. Not the most obvious choice, but it does put some pressure on this pawn, try and force some things in the center, and the knight looks at some of these sensitive squares over here on the queen side. I would probably play a move like bishop e2, just complete development and get ready to castle, or get ready to castle and complete development, I guess. And that's also a good move. Either of those would have been better than e4. So I play this part okay. I take here, takes back with the queen. I kick it with c5. The queen drops back to d2. And I plunge on with d4. And that was one of the top engine choices. So it seems like I'm getting a advantage here with these moves. my advantage is increasing. I think it's varying between -1 and -2, meaning a 1 or 2 pawn advantage for black through these moves. Let's see. He dropped his knight back to e2, which is not the best square. The chess engine once again is recommending knight to a4, trying to keep some pressure on the queen side here. Anyway, after knight e2, I went bishop b7. He defended this pawn with f3, and then I went e5, just grabbing this big center here. And this is rated as winning for black, I guess because white still, although not yet at a material disadvantage, is still having trouble unraveling. And in fact, the chess engine is giving knight c1 as the best choice. That opens up a line for this bishop, and maybe the knight can come out to b3 or something. Anyway, kind of a funny move. My opponent castled, and that's his second kind of big mistake in this game. I play the right move here, bishop b5, exploiting this. And so this is the point at which, well, let's see, he played f4 to block this. So this is the point in the game where my advantage was the largest. and after this, I've played well up to this point, and then after this I start making little mistakes that let my advantage slip away. So the best way to play this is a move I really did not even think of, but it's bishop to h6. Just retreat this bishop so it's no longer in trouble. And the pawn is pinned, so it's not going to be undermining my center here. And it's going to take actually a couple of moves for black to unwind from that pin. And in the meantime, I can grab this key pawn here on e4. So this is the winning continuation. Let's see. Chess engine gives king b1, bishop takes e4, knight to c1, so the knight can come around here again, I guess, or maybe to maybe the knight will support the bishop coming to d3. Maybe the knight could later go to b3, something like that. And then just dropping this bishop back to d5 and c3, trying to undermine things over here. Anyway, that was not, there were also other alternatives along the way, but in any case, I seem to win some material here in the center playing that way. Yeah, just as I said, I didn't think of that idea at all, and I wanted to deal with this threat to the bishop, so I took here. But these exchanges actually allow white plays this part correctly and allows white to defend the e-pawn at the end because he takes back with the queen here. And then, let's see, I can attack that pawn. It's an isolated pawn, so I still have some pressure here. But gradually my edge is slipping. Let's see, he went knight to g3 here, went to this side defending the pawn. And now knight to e5 is the best move here and keeps an edge for black. Instead, I went knight to f6. And now the game is getting more in the range of even chances for both sides. It's still a really complicated game, so not easy to play. Anyway, white continued with bishop to d3, and I went queen b6. These moves are all not the most accurate, but they're reasonable moves. Let's see, he went rook h to f1 now, and I went queen over to e6. And it seems like knight f5 is the best move here, and this is leading to an even position. This allows me to take the pawn, and then he can pin the knight, and I can unpin with queen d5, and the chess engine rates this position as even. So that's how we get to an equal position. Instead, he makes a mistake again, plays rook d to e1, and you know, it's almost like he overlooked this threat of pawn to c4, which is one of the ideas. I mean, I was bringing my queen over here so he couldn't interfere with the my defense of the knight. I want to make sure I keep an eye on that knight, and also I need to defend the f7 pawn so that the knight can move. And then, but there was a secondary motive in that I was looking at this c4 square and preparing to push that pawn. In fact, when I played the queen originally to b6. Oh yeah, I had thought about c6 and pushing it forward, but yeah, I played to b6 anyway. Okay, so let's go back to the game. I was here, he went rook d to e1, and that allowed me to push c4. So once again, I'm actually winning in this position. So he got back to even, and then he made a mistake, and I'm ahead again. But I make another mistake pretty quickly. So he pushes on with e5, and my first instinct is to play the move knight to d5, and then I thought that he would take this pawn here. You can hear me calculating this out loud. Take this pawn here with the bishop and pin my knight, and I thought that wouldn't work out well for me, and I decided to look for something else, and I couldn't find anything else other than taking the bishop, which after you rule out knight to d5, taking the bishop is the second best move here. But knight d5 really is the best move. And if you want to have a little tactics quiz for yourself, why don't you see why knight d5 works out okay for black, good for black. Okay, yeah, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. If I play knight d5 and he tries the pin, I can take his queen, which I had seen, and he can take my queen. And the part that I missed was that I can take back with the knight and stay a piece up. It's that famous coming back with the knight. Where'd the knight come from? The knight actually... Oh, the knight came from this square, yes. The knight's going like this, but when it takes the queen, it also defends my queen. So, yeah, when I was calculating this from this position, yeah, I hadn't noticed that the knight can make this little journey and defend the queen. And so I was assuming at the end of that, after I take his queen and he takes my queen, I take the bishop and he takes the knight, and then, you know, it seems to come out okay for him. He's got pressure on my pawns even with his rook there on the on f4. So anyway, that was my mistake. And after this, it's once again even, I think, or maybe now white starts to get an advantage. I take his bishop, he takes my knight, and oh, this is the mistake where it lets white have an advantage. I can still keep an even position by playing queen to c6. This also is maybe not so obvious, but queen c6 is a nice move. It is pinning the c-pawn here and threatening mate. So anyway, he can throw in one exchange here because that comes with check, but then he has to retreat his queen to defend things over here. And so anyway, that removes a lot of these mating threats he has over here, and this turns out to be an even position. You can see the material. Let's count. I have 6 pawns and he has 6 pawns, and I guess there's no way for either side to gain a material edge here, although it seems like, you know, things are hanging all over the place, but they're not really hanging. I guess everything is defended too. Anyway, that was the way to play it. Instead, I took, and after this, white is better. It's sometimes tough to say whether the 2 rooks are going to be better than the queen. But I think the problem is, you know, not only do I have the 2 rooks versus the queen, and the queen has got an open board where it can give lots of checks, but the king is going to mop up all these pawns. And actually, after rook a8, that was a blunder. I forget what I should have played, maybe retreating that. But right here, if you want to look for the best move for white, this would be a good chance to see if you can spot the winning idea. Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm giving the answer away. The winning move here is queen to g5. And it's kind of a long line. Well, first of all, if I just play g6 to prevent the immediate mate, queen to h6 threatens to mate me, and there's actually no way to avoid it. So there's a forced mate at this point. I think there were some moves to stave off the mate there for a little bit, but anyway, that's losing by force. So rook to oh, not that rook, the other rook. Rook to e2 check is the way to keep the game going the longest. He takes a pawn. Let's see, another check. He hides here to escape the checks, and then king to f8 to step away from the mate. F takes g7, it's given, rather than queen takes. King back. Knight to f5, hitting my rook. The rook comes back, maybe coming over here to defend. So the queen comes down here to d8 check, and the knight is defending the pawn. So the rook comes back. Then knight to h6 check, forcing my king up, taking on g7. Then queen back to g5 check again, driving my king here, and then queen to g8 check. And if I'd gone the other way, queen to g8 would be mate. King to e7, queen takes f7 check, king back, and queen takes bishop. And so at this point, that was a forced line. It was a long forced line. But even if you didn't see all of that, you might have kind of instinctively thought that queen g5 had to be a good move. And if you thought that, you were right. And a lot of times you can discover the rest of the line after that. But it would have been a fine piece of calculation to see all of that in advance. Anyway, he didn't play that after I played rook a to e8. He played king takes d3. And this is still an advantage for white. So white is winning. And through the rest of the game, white has an advantage. Now, we both start making blunders. I think he had more opportunities to play queen g5. So there's better moves for both sides, but we were both really short on time. And eventually, at this position, white still has an edge. It's not an overwhelming edge like it was before, but he just ran out of time. So anyway, pretty interesting game, and still very complicated even at the end. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.